So on to the genitive case. This one is sometimes called the possessive case, but essentially one of its main functions is to show ownership. In English, we do have different versions of nouns for this case. So to make something into genitive in English, we will add an apostrophe s or an s apostrophe. So I have 4 examples here, and they're different. There's singular, 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 plural, all of those, which just means John is singular, cat is singular. Then in the second example, Anna is singular, but there are multiple rabbits. And then the same for the other ones where there's multiple students, but then one classroom, and then multiple students, and then multiple pencils. So these are our versions for that. Of course, you can see that the genitive word is in bold, the nominative is in regular. So that's how we show the genitive case in English. So when we're putting that into Latvian, of course, they have their own version of the genitive case. So we have the chart. It is now nominative and genitive. Genitive answers ka. To be very honest with you, I don't know what ka directly translates to. Google Translate says how. I've heard a variety of things. It might just be one of those words where it means a bunch of things. It just really depends on a lot of stuff. But of course, it functions the same way as all the other charts. These are all in nominative now, and we're going to put them into genitive. You know what to do by now. We find John's, S, first declension, bring it down all the way to A. So we have Jonna. Then we do the same thing for Anna. We find the 4th declension, we bring it down, and you have to be careful because a lot of times AS is plural, but in genitive it is singular still. So we have Anna becomes Annas. Then we have skolani. Now this one, we have I, it's not up here, and so it is actually plural, and that means we have to go all the way down to plural. Which, how do you know which one it is? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, or 3, because once again, it is exactly the same across the board. And it's exactly the same for all of genitive in the plural form. It's just you. Either way, it's you, and I think that's pretty fantastic. So I, of course, becomes skolen. Then we have the feminine versions. This would be a group of female school children. It's plural AS in the 4th declension. We bring it down past the other AS, and we find, well, we just talked about it, it's you. So, skolen again. So now you have another group, making sure we cover every single declension. Latsis, that's 2nd declension IS, comes down and becomes a latsa, but actually this one involves the consonant shift, which I'm not prepared to explain right now, but essentially the Latvian language really prioritizes sounding very nice to speak, kind of in a musical way. So they'll have different grammatical rules for making the words sound better when you're putting them into a sentence. So Latsis becomes Lacha. Then we have Ilze. So we find E, 5th declension, it becomes ES, Ilzes. Then Ingus, which is a name again, just like Ilze. So Ingus, which is a name, we find US in the 3rd declension, we bring it down, it's still US. So Ingus. And so something that I actually learned recently is that US ending, so 3rd declension, is actually even more rare than the 6th declension. Then we have our 6th declension word, sirds. It starts with S, that's the nominative form. We bring it down, and it's, again, just like Ingus, sirds. So this is what I was talking about with the consonant shift. It's a bit of getting used to, and I will need to study this later to find if there are patterns, because I'm sure there's patterns. But this is a chart I found if you'd like to look at it, but it's not extremely important at this time. So now implementing what we've learned when we translate our English versions, we still have genitive version in bold and the nominative version regular. And the reason that cat, rabbits, classroom, pencils, they're in nominative form, the reason for that is because they're not serving any other purpose than just being nouns. So nominative is our base, If you're just saying a cat, it's going to be a nominative, but if you're saying it's in the classroom, then that gets into locative. If you're saying it belongs to the classroom, that's going to genitive. If you're doing something to the classroom, that's accusative. But right now, this is not part of a sentence. It's just very strictly a word that happens to be owned by another word. So classroom just happens to be owned by the students in this case. The rabbits happen to be owned by Anna in this case, so that affects these genitive words. It does not affect the nominative words here. So it's not because there is a rule that is forcing them into that. It's not that if you have a genitive noun that you have to have a nominative one right after. So when we translate this into Latvian, we remember we need to have our version of the genitive form. So we have Jonah instead of John. This is exactly the same as we did before. We now have Jonah, and then we add in the nominative, which is kakis. Then we have Annas, truši. Now this also is impacted by the consonant shift, as well as the muli. This is impacted by the consonant shift. So it's fairly common, and I think it's especially common in the genitive case. Then we have, of course, our skoleniu and skoleniu, and then you just add on the nominative forms. So very simple.